I also need to gain strength because I'm getting on a bit, and I realize that my days of playing sport in order to keep fit have obviously long gone. Like last time I actually played any sport was like at least a decade ago. And so cardio is all over the place. Need to improve that, and I also need to improve basically the lower body because trip danger, falling, all this type of stuff. This is how you go. This is how you exit. Primary cause of I think senior death is usually as a result of the complications from a fall. So I'm saying, right, I've got to basically put on the muscle mass now, whilst I've still got some opportunity because another 10 years, 20 years, it's all over. So yeah, back to
And
the gym, mate.
I, I think my advice would be, as a non-expert, but as someone who does a lot of exercise and sport, I would say three things in pretty much equal measure. One is cardio, the second is strength, it's weights, and the third is flexibility. So like Pilates, Tai Chi, yoga, that type of thing, because that's the one that a lot of people fall because they're too stiff and they like miss a step or they trip over the curb or whatever, and then they break a hip and that's them done.
That's it.
Maybe not,
That's
maybe
it.
not quite, but
No, but the complications from a fall actually do. I think it's a very large percentage of the reason, like you can trace it back to. So essentially, you got to avoid it. Anyway, flexibility. That's definitely something I want to try and do at home. But with regards to the strength, that's going to go into the gym. And obviously the cardio as well. Anyway, folks, yes, welcome to Brainfood Live on Air, bringing it to you every Friday, no fail. I'm actually really enjoying this high cadence of live streams that we're doing. It's really enjoyable and great to have more opportunities to have dialogue with you. And today I've got a brilliant show, or at least a brilliant topic that I'm really quite keen to get stuck into. Talent strategy, what is it? Why do you need it? How do you actually put it together? And when is the right time? Who is the right people to get involved? I put a poll out on Brainfood, I think late last year. Do you even have a talent strategy, folks? And 50% of the responses said, no, we don't. And of that 50%, 10% said they didn't know what it was. Now, no shame on those people that said they didn't know, because I include myself in amongst that number, because oftentimes we are confused as to what a talent strategy is, and we confuse it for a hiring plan, for instance. And so today, what we're going to try and do is unpack those differences and figure out, okay, what makes a talent strategy viable? What makes it distinct from a hiring plan? And why is it something that's super valuable that we in TA can contribute to business success? So that's the topic we've got. Brilliant guests are going to join us, and we're going to go through it. But before we do that, let's just say hello to Adam Gordon, who looks a little bit alarmed right now. I don't know why that is. I hope you're all right. That's all good. And yeah, great to have you here, Adam, and wonderful to do the show. Let's do some sound checks real quick. For the folks who are watching this on Crowdcast, let me know whether the audio and visual is fine in the chat there. I actually screwed up, and not often I do it, but it does happen. This Wednesday, I did a Brainfood Live, and I didn't hook up the LinkedIn. So having asked everyone to actually, set up a LinkedIn Live, I didn't actually connect the two together, so I wouldn't be able to see it. If you're watching this on LinkedIn, do let me know whether the audio and visual is fine. Comment in the chat stream there. Actually, I can see myself on LinkedIn, so I should be okay. But yes, we're going to try and have a dialogical, sort of multi-perspective chat today. So please do get involved with us in the conversation. Now, of course, Brainfood Live cannot continue without the support of our sponsors. And this week we have got one of our favorite sponsors. They came big last year, came big again this year. And you know what? I think they're going big in the recruitment tech scene in general. It is Mackie. Mackie people or Mackie. I think they're stuck between these two things right now. Wonderful company coming out of France, now kind of very much headquartered in the US as well, but global organization. What they do is provide an opportunity for companies to recruit very large numbers of people, but assess them with artificial intelligence. And they've got hundreds of different assessments. So their entire spiel is to say, if you've a kind of company that hires a lot of people, either seasonal workers or you're just simply a large business that hires a large volume, and you want to find a solution to handle the application flow, have great candidate experience, but also have relevant kind of real world relevant assessments, then check out Mackie People. Some really brilliant case studies they've done with the likes of H&M, for instance, recruiting retail staff, which are super, super impressive. And so, yes, check them out, mackiepeople.com. If you are a high volume hirer and you need to get more efficient and get better at hiring your folks, they may be the solution for you. All right, cool. Let's get on with it, Adam. Good to see you anyway. And yeah, let's review the newsletter real quick. Did you read it last week? And if so, what was interesting, mate?
I did. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And my first newsletter item I'd like to talk about is immigration. It's U.S. immigration. It's the O1 visa for exceptional artists. And the really interesting trend has been that OnlyFans models and social media influencers have made up very considerably the vast majority of people getting these visas going into the US right now. Lawyers claim that their exceptional artistry can be evidenced through the algorithm, as in through their likes and shares. But critics are saying that, like, I don't know, if I'm a top cellist, then I might not be brilliant at marketing myself on, TikTok, and therefore, but my artistry might be absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
So it seems like a little bit of an unfair system. But like things that we didn't expect to be talking about 5 years ago.
No, but you know what? I wrote it a little bit in the commentary. I think it's some evidence that we've moved fully into this as a spectacle. It's its own value. Sensationalism is its own value, and this is obviously in full evidence with the politicians that we're kind of seeing very visibly today. But yeah, I think it is. I think there's two elements to this. Is it that people are individually being swayed in a subconscious way by people who have prominence or are mistaking prominence for performance, let's say, and or is it simply algorithmic, as you mentioned? A lot of the US, this kind of new US regime, are pretty much bought into this idea of using AI for stuff. Do you remember how they did the trade sort of tariff sort of levels? That was just chat GPT, which is why you got some absurd sort of outcomes, like a bunch of penguins on an uninhabited island getting levied with a 20% tariff rate. Total nonsense. But I think something like this might have occurred. Like, in other words, they said, right, what is the best proxy for people we want in the country? I guess what? Someone who's got a lot of likes on their social media, maybe that's a good evidence of the person that might be done. They're in. Guess what? If you're an OnlyFans model, I dare say you're going to get a decent amount of likes compared to your cellist or your nuclear physicist, even. So yeah, really interesting how they've done this.
Can I just extend this a little bit into something that I don't think you talked about, the article didn't talk about, and I don't think you've mentioned, but I've got some friends who work in like government relations, lobbying, that type of area. And the big trend in their area, and I don't know if this is fact or it's just hearsay, but I was told yesterday, the big trend in their area is that social media influencers are managing to get themselves into the White House on account of their relationships with the likes of anybody whose surname is a Trump, and they are taking on payments from companies in order to get in there and get their messages heard by the people in charge.
Not
Unbelievable.
remote.
If true, unbelievable.
I actually don't think it is unbelievable. I think that's absolutely logical. I mean, Trump himself is an influencer. He's the first influencer president when you think about it. He wouldn't be there if it wasn't for his damn TV show. He's kind of set the trend. I do believe influence in a weird way will translate into political influence. So we're at this point now where the personal brand journey that a lot of us kind of rightfully denigrate, that translates into political influence, but I think it will also translate into career benefit in a way we thought might have gone away. All of the advice in the early social media era of build your personal brand, I think it totally matters today. And fair or not, and I get it, not all of us want to be, singing for our supper, so to say. quoting a good friend of mine who I think is watching right now. But you have to do it. You have to get out there. And that's going to just bring a whole new set of winners and losers in a totally unjust way. But then that's the situation, folks. Okay, interesting one. What else, mate?
Let's talk about talent tech, the Talent Labs trends report.
Yeah,
So
Emma Mertens.
yes, lots and lots of great information, dense with great information. I just want to really sort of summarize in three or four things, trends that I saw come through. Number one, TA teams are distressed. They've got just far too much to do. The second thing is AI is no longer a something that people can ignore. It's becoming absolutely core. It's really vital, and the teams that are not keeping up are going to fall behind very considerably in 2026. And that was a trend that came through or that was a prediction of Johnny Campbell as well, another one. And then the third one I want to mention was that TA is visibly lifting itself up the ladder, up the value chain within the organization as it shifts to becoming more strategic and less filling jobs. That's a clear trend that's emerging, and I'm looking forward to talking about our main topic today around, the broader talent agenda.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a great piece of work, as always, from the Talent Labs.
It is, yeah. I've just shared the link in the chat stream there, folks. So go check it out. I mean, the good thing about this is also that it is like a time series. Every year they do it, and you can track change over time, which I think is super interesting. I think the two things I got out of this was that maybe there was some indication that the size of talent acquisition teams has kind of stabilized, because we've been on this downward trend probably for 2-3 years, where essentially we've been reduced in number. But according to the research that Emma's put together there, it looks like the size of the team is kind of stabilized. So maybe we hit the bottom, let's say, of the cost cutting. Are we down to the bare bones such that no more cuts are happening? I hope so, even though I don't think so. And secondly, obviously, we all know the story now. D&I just dropping off the cliff, sadly enough. So as a headline priority for TA, TA's basically read the room, at least as far as the CEOs are concerned, and said, right, we can't go with this as a priority, and it's been relegated out. Although there is some evidence that maybe some practices which promote more equitable hiring have kind of diffused into the recruitment best practice now, and may no longer be obviously considered to be DE&I related, because it's just recruitment best practice. But it is it would push nonetheless the same outcome. For instance, the increased use of panel interviews rather than one-to-one interviews, which has been one of the strong recommendations of the DE&I movement over time. So as a little bit of a silver lining on that rather gloomy sort of insight, is that maybe some of the best practice from D&I kind of just infused into recruitment best practice in general. Okay, anyway, check it out. Really good. What else, mate? Found one?
Yeah, okay. So Spencer Stewart's report or it was in Hunt Scanlon, but I think it was Spencer Stewart's data and insights around how the functional roles of the C-suite are changing. So the things that I picked out of this is they're becoming ever more complex as the world, the macroeconomic environment, etc. And industries change so fast. Technology's changing like never before, I think. Couple of insights. Most say Fortune 500 or S&P 500 chief executives, CFOs, and COOs are recruited from within. They are upwards promotions, whereas the ones alongside that are I would call that the core decision-making unit is the CEO, the CFO, and the COO, right? But the other C-suite roles like chief general counsel or chief information officer, chief communications officer, that type of thing, they are more often than not coming from outside. They're more often than not people that are coming, lateral moves from other organizations. Tenure varies according to the job function, with the CEOs staying the longest and COOs staying the shortest. So, I mean, who's the fall guy or the fall girl in that?
Yeah.
Right? Things are going badly. Get rid of the COO.
Yeah.
Seems to be the playbook. Um,
it, it might actually be one of the sort of tacit purposes of a CEO. It's basically to be the fall person for it. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
yeah,
okay, right.
absolutely. Representation from women and underrepresented groups remains low, but is definitely growing. It said there was a big. You could clearly see upwards numbers in that.
That's also very conspicuous because the female dominance of CHROs was actually surprised me. I thought it was much more 50-50. So we all know that HR is dominated by women generally. But there's also, I mean, I subscribe to the narrative that the leadership levels of CHR, of the HR function, ultimately it was a lot more even in terms of more sort of 50-50 men and women. But according to this report, 73% of CHROs were women, which is broadly kind of aligned to the gender sort of split in the function in general. So it's actually not a very gender diverse function at all. And that's something maybe we should think about as well. But there you have it. Anyway, I'd
Feels like
love
it's
to get.
probably feels like it's probably on balance. If you look at engineering and maybe finance, for example, there's you know, very considerable male
It
dominance.
is, yeah, male and female. Basically, you've self-sorted. Is it self-sorting into different functions? We don't know. Like we don't know why this is, but there's very few departments where there is a absolute 50-50 split. I can't really think of any one obvious one, which would be described in that way. Maybe finance actually.
Wonder about marketing. Maybe I wonder if that's it. Might be more female. I can't. I
Marketing
didn't.
is much more female for
Is it?
sure.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. One thing we
for
do
sure.
know from a Brainfood Live from a few months ago is there is no biological reason for this whatsoever. There is no difference between men and women's capabilities at
What
doing any
what
different.
brand food life was that? I think I happen to agree broadly, but I can't remember doing that
Oh,
show with you, mate.
no, no. I
Um,
mean, it wasn't about that subject, but it was something that I learned about in preparation for talking about the news
yeah,
letter from a few months back.
yeah, but I tell you what, it may not be entirely biological, but we are social, and it's the sociological reasons why this occurs. So that's also true. Okay, let's get on with it. We're going to move on. We're going to talk about talent strategy. Let's bring our guests on. They've been waiting on in the wings. Let's discuss this. But before we bring them on, Adam, what's your take on talent strategy versus hiring plan? I mean, is it crystal in your mind how those two things are different, or are you kind of confused? Say
No,
in the same way, I confess to being a bit confused between two. To be fair,
no, I don't think it's confusing at all. I think that it's all about you chunk it up to the chief executive level, and it's about how does the organization achieve their corporate tasks, and is that people doing jobs who are employees? Is it people doing jobs who are some other form of contracted? Is it outsourcing these things because that's the right thing to do? And then I think more and more into this conversation has to be about is it AI agents? And the person, I've said this like countless times on here, there needs to be one person whose job is to determine do the corporate tasks get, how do the corporate tasks get achieved in the different business functions, in the different countries, et cetera, et cetera. That's what I think it is. So I can't wait to find out what our guests say.
all right. I'd love to see you directly contradicted by our guests here, mate. So I'm hoping our guests will come on and do that. All right, let's bring them on. So Liz, I've just invited you here. John, I didn't realize you're on holiday, so I do thank you so much for taking some time off and joining us for this chat. We've got Kerry here as well, who's got up like ridiculously early. I think it's only like 6 o'clock or something for her. So I really do think I am very thankful for people who are getting up early to come and join us. Let's go here. Here we have Liz. Liz, wonderful to see you. Great to have
Morning.
you on the show.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
And I can see evidence of the snow behind you. I think, is that
Yes,
right?
indeed. And snowflakes from my children. We had a foot of
Lovely.
snow yesterday.
Amazing stuff. Sometimes winter, this is where you need a proper winter. Where are you based there, Liz?
I'm based in Toronto, Toronto,
There we
Canada.
go. This
Yes.
is what we
And you were
want.
talking about fitness earlier, Hung, and I was like shoveling snow on my driveway yesterday thinking this is my workout. This is how I stay fit in winter.
That is hard work for real. Liz, for the folks who don't know you, why don't you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you and what it is you do?
Yeah. I'm Liz Levick. I currently lead talent acquisition for a medium sized insurance company, Securian Canada. And I'm basically responsible for all aspects of talent acquisition, which is one of the things I'm really loving about the role I'm in currently. So everything from, setting our strategy through to the operations, leading a team, talent intelligence, kind of covering all of those facets. So we hire specifically, like the market I'm covering is specifically Canada at the moment. And prior to that, I spent nearly 7 years at LinkedIn in Australia, leading their talent acquisition team. So I also have experience that spans Asia Pacific and Australia and New Zealand.
Yeah, fantastic stuff, Liz. And you were brilliant in commentating on that post that actually triggered this conversation. So I'd love to get. This is a great opportunity for me to learn more.
What was that
So
comment?
yeah, I actually got it here, so I'm going to bring it up. But for Kerry and John, yeah, here we go. If you're struggling to get on, all you got to kind of refresh the browser. I think there's a little bit of a bug on the front end for Crowdcast, but John is here, which is great stuff. John, wonderful to see you, and again, thanks for taking some time out from your holiday. John, why don't you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do, sir?
Yeah, thanks, Hung. Just check you can hear me okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm originally from the UK. Began my career in marketing and rec ads, then moved to Asia in 2007, worked a couple of years for a recruitment firm in Macau, then moved to Hong Kong, Singapore, worked across a various range of industries, leading regional and global TA teams. A couple of years ago, I returned to Europe to join a company called Dialectica, which is an information services business, where I led the global TA team for Dialectica.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. And I remember actually having interaction with you. Was it a RecFest a couple of years ago, something like this, John? I can't quite recall. I do believe it was some sort of a summary style event, wasn't it? Brilliant stuff. Great to see you. And we have Kerry here as well. Kerry, thanks for getting up so early. I know it's like ridiculously early for you, so I really appreciate it. Can you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
Sure. I'm Carrie Tejan-Smith. I'm the founder of the Wildfire Group. We work with companies on talent acquisition, process audits, hiring systems, tools, vetting and selection, and risk mitigation and hiring. I started out in agency recruiting, and then I moved into U.S. civil service with federal agencies. Later on into in-house recruiting and people ops roles in tech. Moving across those worlds really gave me a unique lens on how hiring decisions actually get made and where things kind of start to break down. These days, my work really focuses on how AI and hiring systems shape decisions at scale, especially when speed and automation begin to replace judgment and accountability. I do still stay hands-on as a practitioner. I deliberately keep working inside real systems and tools. When things are changing this fast, you can't afford to stay theoretical. So glad to be here.
I love that, Kerry. And in fact, I mean, this is a complete sidebar, but I think one of the reasons why AI has caught TA a little bit basically why TA has been a bit slow is because the leadership tier have been too far away from the coal face, and its immediate impact has been at the desk, like right there. So, the leadership has not been able to provide the leadership because they're just too remote from it. Let's stay with you on this, Kerry, because I think you also contributed to this online debate. All three of you did, which is why you're on the show. But I think you mentioned that actually, most TA functions don't actually have a talent strategy or something to that effect. Can you explain to me why you had that opinion, Kerry? And, why do you think that is, for instance, if that was the case?
Well, I think most companies talk about talent strategy, but what they mean is execution. So it's hiring faster, it's building better tools, building cleaner funnels. And that's not talent strategy, that's a hiring plan. A hiring plan answers questions like, what roles are we filling, how many, and when. It assumes the organization's already designed correctly and just needs to be staffed. But it's downstream work, really. Talent strategy is upstream. It asks why those roles exist in the first place, what outcomes are actually meant to drive, and whether hiring's even the right lever at all. A hiring plan fills seats. Talent strategy decides which seats should exist, which shouldn't, and which problems might better be solved through automation, redesign, or redistributing the work. When hiring feels broken, it's almost never because the recruiters aren't working hard enough. It's because talent acquisition's been undervalued. I see talent acquisition as that it's not a cost center, it's a revenue lever. And most companies don't look at it that way. Every role you fill, how long it takes to fill, how clearly it's scoped, all directly affect revenue velocity. It affects sales capacity, product delivery, customer experience. So I don't think headcount's neutral. When roles sit open, revenue gets delayed, and when TA is undervalued, companies become reactive. And I think we're seeing a lot of that now. When it's treated as a revenue driver, hiring becomes more intentional instead of chaotic. And most organizations jump straight to hiring plans because they're tangible and comfortable. Talent strategy forces harder conversations about power, priorities, and accountability. And that's why it's rare. And it's also exactly why it matters more.
Yeah, really, really good description there. So the talent strategy is not oppositional to hiring plan, but it's simply upstream of it, isn't it? I mean, ideal case, you design a talent strategy, and then maybe the hiring plan emerges from the strategy. So one is the vision document, so to say. Other one might be the execution plan. Go to John on this. Have you got any sort of observations from your side on that distinction between the two, John? Do you think that's a fair sort of description of those two things, or is there any nuance that I'm missing here?
Yes, I think Kerry's spot on. So there are a lot more levers to get the talent you want in your business than talent acquisition. And I say this as a TA person, right? But a lot of us approach, we spent many years approaching a TA strategy, which is budget, headcount, hires. And sometimes that's a fantastic granular roadmap and plan of what needs to drop every quarter, which roles. Sometimes it's a general headcount number and you have to work out as you go along. Some companies are good at it, some companies are bad at it. For a proper talent strategy, as Kerry said, it works upstream, and I think this is where we're heading to. There's nothing really commercial about a TA strategy. And I'm sure a lot of us have been in those conversations where we're asked to hire a role that we think is not feasible at the salary level, or open up an office in a city where that talent doesn't really exist. And of course, there are tools now to challenge that. But we're still having those conversations downstream. A talent strategy is going to bring in everything. And I think this is where we're heading to as a function. We're the go-to-market arm of talent. We're going to see much more joined up, unified talent functions in businesses, and the decision making is going to be at that level. And you think about it: if you're going to fly to the US, right, from the UK at Christmas, if you buy that ticket now, it's generally going to be cheaper, and you're going to have more options than if you book it on December the 20th. So the talent strategy is kind of the same. And the other levers we have maybe don't sit in TA, but they sit across learning and development. So you've got succession planning, internal mobility, AI agents, obviously. You've got things like leadership development. You've got talent reviews, performance management. All of these different processes are potential levers to bring in that talent you want. So I can go to market and bring in these skills into the business, or we can look at other options at the right time. And that might be training, retraining, right? It might be moving people across the business. And you have the added advantage of less risk. You have the added advantage of potentially less cost, and also you're not retrenching people whose skills you might not need in a year or 2 years' time. So that for me is where the talent strategy sits, and it's a much more commercial conversation when you're looking at maybe we can open these roles up on a contingent basis. Maybe we can look at a fractional opportunity. Maybe we can group these positions. These are all the conversations you can't have further downstream when those decisions have been made and when the budgets have been signed off and everyone's expecting to hire, because then the clock's ticking.
All right, really good, John. And you've actually introduced another dimension I want to talk about a little bit more here. Talent strategy is actually much bigger than talent acquisition as a function, because as you mentioned, it's almost everyone involved in it. And this is obviously everyone in HR, the talent management, the L&D, the comp and bends, all of that stuff is part of that conversation. But even wider than that, because you're then talking about the business operations and all of the heads of function and so on. So might it be part of the problem we have possibly is that have we kind of tried to misuse the word talent strategy a little bit? We've overused it to try, because it's a higher status, higher value thing. With TA's always on about trying to become more strategic. So is it a little bit of the confusion as a result of us kind of making a political move to grab that space? What are your thoughts on that, Liz? Let's bring you. I could be totally wrong. I just put the cynical hat on there. You know what I mean? So what are your thoughts?
I think that in the past, like perhaps at times it was a political move, but I would say I agree with something Adam said earlier, which is that TA is inevitably becoming more strategic. And I think that if you're doing your job well in the current climate, which is constantly changing as a TA professional, then you are up leveling to be more strategic and to look more at like talent strategy looks at the entire employee life cycle, right? And TA, I think historically, yes, we've played only in that acquisition space, but I do feel that there's a role, and maybe this is, because of the organizations that I've worked in the past where we have maybe a more comprehensive talent strategy. TA absolutely has a role to play, in my opinion, in things like internal mobility and helping to build internal talent marketplaces and how we mobilize talent across the organization. And that happens, alongside going externally for talent as well. But I think that TA really is, I don't know, I do see it as a strategic function. I think a lot of the time, talent acquisition, we can fall into being focused on execution and on speed. And that's probably where talent acquisition started out. But I would say that over time, we've moved into a much more strategic way of operating. And again, that also comes down to like, do your leaders have a voice at the HR table? Does your CHRO have the ear of your CEO? I think it's like talent acquisition ladders up into that broader talent strategy. We don't own the talent strategy, but we definitely influence the talent strategy.
Yeah, really good. At what point of size of company does a talent strategy become like a thing? I mean, is it like 10 people? I mean, presumably, yes, but realistically, does that even happen? Like, when does it actually emerge? It seems to emerge for me when there is a multifunctional sort of HR function, and therefore you're already talking about, a company that's medium sized and upwards. In your experiences, like, when have you seen talent strategy basically emerge as a clearly defined thing? And is it related to company size, scale? Is it related to the sector of the company, for instance? Any thoughts on that? Anybody can come in to answer this.
What I usually see, I'll jump in, is mid-sized companies, when they hit kind of that 300 to 500 person mark, is usually when I see them bringing someone in talent operations. And usually by that point, they've selected an ATS, they've built kind of a framework for process, but they've built that framework after they've selected the ATS, and that's when they bring an operations person in. But they're doing it backwards. You should be bringing in the operations person first to design the processes that are going to work the best. Then buy the technology that's going to align to your processes. But most companies do it backwards. So then you're stuck kind of being a slave to your systems and tools instead of having it go the other direction.
That's a really good point, Kerry. And John, you mentioned in the chat that sometimes the talent strategy isn't feasible. Like you might have, let's say, a strategy that's somehow dislocated from the reality. But this may be as a result of where, say, procurement decisions are made. So I'm just imagining, you talk about the ATS, Kerry, but sometimes we're not making a decision on what ATS to use. That's made by procurement. They're saying, okay, you're using this, guys. We can't make a talent strategy a sort of that's a remote from that decision. Like we have to play with the cards that we're dealt, and if we have a module of a wider system we need to use, then that is a fixed point in our external conditions, and our strategy has to emerge from that. John, go to you on this in terms of the sort of unfeasible talent strategy you've seen. Like what makes a talent strategy feasible? How does it actually come to pass that someone might have a strategy that isn't actually doable?
Yeah, I've seen good ones. I've seen bad ones. I'm sure we all have. I think basically you need to be able to articulate what your talent requirements are going to be over the next 1, 5, 10 years, right? It doesn't have to be 100% accurate because it's never going to be. But you have to be able to lay that out so that a roadmap for achieving that can be put on top, because transformations, skills transformations in the business, they take time. They can take time. So you need to have that. You also need to have a singular lens on those talent levers that I talked about. It's no good having L&D knocking out their own programs, TA just hiring roles that managers want to hire or don't want to hire. It has to be unified, and you have to be working to that common goal. And of course, you have to be able to flex in that. And I think the third thing that you need is you need a currency. You need some sort of taxonomy. It's a whole other conversation about skills taxonomies and capabilities, but you need something like that. That's the only way that you can really help the managers and HR to look at what you have and what you need. And there's different ways to do that. But if you're going to build, for example, as Liz said, a talent marketplace, I think that's fantastic because it's a way of showing your employees what the skills requirements are going to be over the next 6, 12, 18 months. Because other than that, how do we know? I'm a recruiter. Perhaps in 18 months' time, my business isn't going to need my skill set. If I'm aware of that, and if there's some transparency over skills requirements, I can take that time when I see that my skills are not going to be vital to the business to move myself to a different role or a different set of skills or train myself up. So I think it's probably those three things. It's not easy because a lot of companies can't even articulate what their skills requirements are going to be. But I think what we are seeing, another, as well as the agentic side of AI, what AI can do is it can sit over multiple platforms. So even if your ATS is not connected to your HRIS, if it's not connected to your talent management, it's not connected to the system you use for succession planning, etc., AI can look over those different platforms and give you insights on that. So there are ways that we can use new and emerging technologies to help us kind of frame what we have. But of course, it's the same as any conversation about AI. If your data that you start with or the conversations you're having are not aligned on something like skills or capabilities, then it's like 100 different people talking different languages.
Yeah, and I think AI does point us a little bit more in that direction. I think, Liz, you mentioned it, inevitably there's a journey towards more strategic stuff simply because we're going to have more intelligence. I mean, when everything was siloed, there was a massive practical impediment towards doing anything strategic because you didn't have the information, or it took too much effort to extract information from disparate functions, different systems to have a sensible sort of take on it. Now AI can unlock this. Before we get to the AI part, though, I want to talk about the CEO because it seems to me that talent strategy, when I've seen it prominently, when you see sort of a prominent example of a company with a talent strategy, the CEO seems to be the person articulating it. And I just remember, for instance, do you remember when Mark Zuckerberg said, you know what, we're going to get rid of the middle managers. Every middle manager is going to be a doer. We've over bloated. Everyone's got to be on it, like physical hands on. And I just think, you know what, that's an example of a talent strategy, isn't it? It's like he's recognized that his organization is overly bloated with people that aren't actually operators. He wants to improve the ratio of operators in the business, and he's given pretty clear direction. Very high level, obviously not for it's not particularly forensic, but obviously that cascades down, presumably. Then somebody in HR has produced a document that drives towards that goal. So how important is the CEO talent strategy? Does it exist without that person actually having an opinion? Does HR or whatever sort of CHRO come up with it independently of CHR of the CEO? How does it work?
Can I just say, I know I'm not the expert on this, but like just your example, your Mark Zuckerberg example, that's not a strategy. That's one decision as part of a strategy. It's a tactic. That's just like one decision. So that's not a talent strategy. That's an organizational design decision. What that is.
But sure, but doesn't that drive you towards a talent strategy though? Like ultimately, he's not going to come up with a very forensic way of doing it, but he said, "Look, this is the direction of travel." But yeah, I
Could be
take your point.
it could be one of 1,000 like legs of a talent strategy.
Yeah, it's JFK saying we're going to land on the moon, right? But the other factor is you've got to give your team the wherewithal, the budget, the support, the support from communications to make that happen. And sometimes I think CEOs will open their mouth and say something before it's really, the full effects of that have really been thought about within an organization. Because, is anyone really going to hold Zuckerberg to account on that in 5 years' time, where they find that their middle management layer is exactly as it was 5 years previously? So, yeah, it's a strategic direction, and if he's saying the same thing internally to his HR and talent team, then you do hope that he's providing them with the support and something more granular so that they can, because I wouldn't expect the talent team to be making those business decisions, right? The business decision has to be, this is what we want to do. And then the talent team say, well, these are your options of how we do it.
Yeah, so this is a alignment sort of with a business strategy and the talent strategy, isn't it? So I wonder whether either Liz or Kerry have got an opinion on that. How do you align the two? So business strategy, presumably, we hope we know what that is. How do we ensure that our talent strategy aligns with that?
My take is if you have a business strategy, you have a talent strategy, whether you've written it down on paper or not, because you cannot deliver on business outcomes without people. Um, but I think your talent strategy should be a direct bridge from the business strategy. And that's also why you need the CEO singing it from the top, right? Like drumming that or banging on that drum constantly, because you need to drive it from the top down. And a talent strategy builds or helps us to execute on the business objectives. So, what have we said that we want to deliver on? And then we need to think, how are we going to do that through our people in the organization? And that is looking at, like we've said, the whole talent life cycle, how we hire, develop, grow, and retain talent. And then it also, the talent strategy asks the question, where do we buy, borrow, build, or automate? And a talent strategy, I guess, historically has been about people. And then, as we've mentioned already today, now we're also thinking about, okay, like how do people and machines together help to deliver on that talent strategy?
Yeah, maybe it's a capability strategy, Liz. So the terminology might have to change. Talent, I assume talent is associated with human beings. We wouldn't refer to AI as talent, would we? But if we're recommending an AI solution, then in fact that would be, we need a different term. Kerry, your views on this? How do we align business and talent strategy?
Well, I definitely think it has to be a top-down approach. And what I see in a lot of small to mid-sized businesses is that different business units kind of own their own strategy instead of having an aligned strategy that TA creates. You wouldn't let the leaders of technical support determine how the go-to-market team does its job. And likewise, you have to enable your talent acquisition leaders. Responsibilities have to be really clean. Hiring managers have to own the outcomes, not just requisitions. Their jobs to define what success actually looks like, how it's measured, why the role exists now. Talent acquisition just plays a different role. TA is the systems architect, and they translate strategy into sequencing, pipelines, and trade-offs. They surface conflicts between requests and strategy, and they slow things down when clarity is missing. Finance is another critical and underused partner. They should be modeling the cost of delay, the cost of a mishire, and the real return on investment in capacity decisions. When finance is only treated like a gatekeeper, companies really miss the chance to make smarter trade-offs earlier. Leadership sets the constraints. They decide priorities. Their role is really to protect strategic hiring decisions from short-term panic and to step in when trade-offs have to be made. I actually prefer talent acquisition to sit under operations rather than HR. I also think attrition should live there too, because when it does, companies can address poor management faster, address it sooner, and stop losing their best people unnecessarily. If TAs treated like an intake process, and hiring managers are rewarded for speed alone, talent strategy just can't survive. And again, that's where I see it in a lot of mid-sized and small enterprise companies.
Yeah, really, really interesting. Folks, I just noticed the time we're flying through this. We've got a couple of more things to talk about, particularly because talent strategy plus this advent of AI, everyone needs to have a talent strategy these days. But before we get there, we need to make sure that we're all connected because Brainfood Live on air, one of the main reasons why we want to do this is to make sure everyone gets access to collective intelligence. This conversation is an example of that. But why not continue this conversation afterwards when we go off air? Please make sure you do it. Best way to do it is, of course, to connect with everyone who is already watching the show. So take a moment, grab your LinkedIn URL and stick it in the chat stream there, and then make sure you connect with everyone who's done the same. If you are watching this on any of the LinkedIns, why don't you do the same? Just copy your LinkedIn URL, stick it in the comment thread, and then just connect with folks who are there. Worst case scenario is you're going to end up with 20, 30, 40 new people that you can talk to about this topic. Okay, so we had a talent strategy, folks, but then suddenly AI emerges, and it's having this kind of multi-dimensional impact on everything that we're doing. It's changing the sort of resources we need. It's changing the skills perhaps we previously looked for. It's changing the work that we're doing. It's even changing the workers themselves, in terms of how they talk and operate things. How do we sort of make sure our talent strategy is kind of future-proofed, is AI-friendly? How do we include AI into our thinking in this? Have you seen or witnessed any of these examples of companies doing this? Have you got any thoughts as to how you might make it happen if you were in charge of a talent strategy in a business? Any thoughts on this? Liz, why don't we go you for this? We'll go round robin, but I've picked on you to go first, Liz. Hope that's okay.
That's fine. Yeah, I mean, so have I seen companies that are doing it well? I mean, I think there are some. I still think a lot of companies are like early on that journey, unfortunately. And like if you read even your predictions, Hung, from a week or so ago, were like kind of hard to read from a TA perspective because in some ways it paints a sort of bleak picture. But I do also think AI gives us that opportunity to really step into that more strategic TA role that we've been talking about. I think that we need to look at AI as something that is going to amplify the talent that we have in our business, and it's going to remove some of the mundane tasks. Well, it does a lot more than actually just remove the mundane tasks, but it is going to remove a lot of the task-based work that we're doing, and then enable our teams to be more strategic and to add more strategic value to the business. I think it's going to challenge us, in our talent strategies, and when we're crafting that, to really ask the question, like, what work is really human work, and then what work is, AI is machine work that can be taken off that plate. And then, yeah, I don't know. I think, yeah, I'm not sure. I don't, and to be honest, we're not doing it like yet well. We're definitely on that journey in my current organization, and a lot of our focus has been around building that capability. We've talked about capability a lot today, and building AI capability in the business. Learning velocity. How do we help our team members to learn and develop these new skills as quickly as they're coming out? I think that's a really big challenge that organizations are going to have to address, and talent acquisition is going to have to look at as well.
Yeah, really, really good, Liz. And I think everyone's in this boat. It's beyond just HR, beyond just recruitment, isn't it? Like, AI's turned up. Probably the CEOs are thinking, right, that's got to impact our talent strategy, even if they may not have that terminology. But they are thinking, right, the capability that AI is providing is going to change the makeup of the organization. Therefore, that will translate into an evolving talent strategy, so to say. Mainly as a result, one of the things I've seen is, we all need to hire more AI fluent people. The number of times, I think the number of instances where AI has been inserted into job descriptions, is gone up massively, no matter what the job is. Like, we want AI fluency. Reminds me so much of that digitization wave that we saw when the internet arrived. It's like, we need internet ready people. Or that was so the perception, and I guess that then translates into the sort of hiring plans that we need. John, your thoughts on this? How does AI impact talent strategies? How do we as TA leaders and HR leaders really bring this on board?
Yeah, I think there's a tendency at the moment to think about how AI is changing jobs, rather than, again, going up a level or two and starting to look at the process and the tasks in there, right? So if you look at any process, it's comprised of a number of often sequential tasks. Some of those tasks, you can say a bot or some sort of automation can take that, right? And it's not always a question, as we know, about can. It should as well in that conversation. Then when you go a level down, you've got roles underneath. So I think a lot of organizations are thinking about how is AI going to affect a role, but we need to think about it more at that task level. And I think then that allows you to be more strategic. It also, when you drop down, you start to see organizationally that sometimes roles or functions or departments in your business have changed enough for it actually to be a completely different role, right? If you take enough of my role away, you've changed my role. So perhaps you're taking out the aspects of my role that I might like. I might like those administrative parts of my role. But I guess that's another conversation. Where this talent strategy fits into this is that, I think we have to start to be top down. So look at task, look at the tasks remaining after you've taken those tasks out, then restructure organizations and jobs accordingly. And it might be the case that many organizations then have to reconsider what exactly they have. Do you now have the right people in the right roles if that role's changed? So that goes back to what I was saying before about, you have to really understand the skills, the capabilities of the business. And if you do that, then it's much more like a chessboard where you can move pieces around. Because my sales team might have gone from hunters to farmers overnight, because we've got some AI agents at the front end. Now, as we know, as anyone who's hired those roles, it's a different role, and it's a different person that excels in that role. So we've really got to get that understanding. And there are tools out there. I was speaking to a tool called Beamable coming out of Australia last year, and they have a really, a really good tool to look at things from the organizational aspect and the task aspect, and then you're moving things around in that organization. And I worry that probably the first pass of this, people are just looking at job roles and they're not considering things like, if you change my job role, am I still going to enjoy it? If you change my job role enough, am I still going to be good at that? And then what does the career path look like, etc. So for me, it all still comes down to that data and the understanding of what we have, what we need, what we have in the business, and then aligning that with what is outside in the market, because that's another decision, right? Do we retrain, or do we bring in new skills like AI skills, or can we train that internally?
Yeah, really interesting. You have actually got me thinking about what happened when agriculture was invented, so to say. Like what did the hunter-gatherer actually do? Didn't we go to like slash and burn our agriculture first? So we didn't go big jump into, having fenced off fields and all the rest of it. But we kind of planted a bunch of stuff, kept on hunting and gathering, and just had a cycle to come back to it. So maybe it's a little bit more of an experimental approach to these types of seismic changes. May not be the big break, even though pressure is to do big break right now. Kerry, I think I've got to leave the final word to you. AI is coming in, disrupting everything, disrupting talent strategy, surely. How do we as TA folks sort of absorb this and come out winning?
Well, actually, when talent strategy in 2026 means I don't start with tools. I say take a pause with the tools. There's over 400 last count that I've seen new AI TA tools, and we don't want to duct tape them on top of legacy ATS systems without revamping the process. So I say take a pause with tools, because the things are going to change a lot in the next 2 to 3 years. Half these companies are going to be consolidated and absorbed, and half are going to go out of business. So I say take a pause with tools, vet them. That way you're ready to make decisions after the AI market does consolidate. Start with who owns decisions, how systems shape the behaviors, what gets optimized, what doesn't, when humans stay in the loop, and why accountability still has to land somewhere. The strongest companies, in my opinion, won't be defined by their tech stacks. They're going to be defined by decision clarity, stability, and transparency.
Yeah, really good, Kerry. Thank you so much for giving your observations on that final point. Really quite relevant as well. I mean, it is a chaotic state in terms of the technology solutions out there. Does it actually make sense to just wait a little bit for consolidation wave to roll out? I'm not sure about that either. But who is sure about anything? We're not. We're all just kind of feeling our way across the river, so to say, as best we can. So that's about it, everybody. We're going to let it go there. I just want to thank all of our wonderful guests for joining us and giving us an hour of their time. So Liz Levick, thank you so much for joining us over from Canada. John, wonderful to see you. Great to take. Thank you so much for taking time away from your holiday to join us as well. And Kerry, thanks so much for being so bright and early with us on Brainfood Live. Brilliant to have all three of you join us today. Okay, folks, that's about it. We've got to let it go there. We'll be back, of course, next week. We have a double header, once more a double header. We've got a very interesting show midweek. We're going to be talking about how AI is being used to recruit in the police. Do you know anything about the police force, folks? 250,000 people work for the police forces in the UK. 150,000 of those are actually police officers. And it turns out the police departments, some of them have been very progressive with using artificial intelligence to do their recruiting. So we're going to be doing that on Wednesday. Do make sure you sign up for that event. Follow the channel on this as well. And on Friday, we're going to be talking about recruitment ops, recruitment operations. One of my true kind of axioms of this year is I do believe that you need to have an operations function to accelerate AI adoption. So in other words, you need a specialist in your team that isn't thinking about headcount, but thinking about efficiency, process, in order to accelerate AI. We're going to bring in a lot of recruitment ops leads and ops managers that are going to talk to us about how they interact with TA and how they have accelerated AI adoption through the function. Make sure you join us for that, folks. It's going to be great. All right, that's about it. I'll see you next week. That was all right, wasn't it, Adam? Quite interesting.
Very, very good. Although I have to say, I was involved in a completely a tangential conversation on the chat.
You're still involved in it. I noticed that's it sort of caught your attention, but it is a really good conversation. So I think you should continue with it, mate.
Well, yes. I just, I think I've chunked it up a lot more than everybody else has that's been in here when I've said about, actually talent is actually getting your corporate tasks done is probably somewhere above talent, because talent is about people. Like an AI agent is not talent, right? And
no, I agree.
Outsourcing is not, but outsourcing is. That's about humans doing jobs on your behalf, just not on your payroll.
There's two different levels of expanding scope. This is how I see it, is that TA has got to expand scope beyond the talent and the acquisition. So the two acronyms there, or the two sort of words there, they need to be expanded both directions. So we need to think about talent access and using basically being the bridge to bring in human beings to do work irrespective of contractual level or contractual sort of relationship. And then beyond the talent side, because you can't call a robot a talent, you can't call automation talent. It's basically a capability.
So therefore, whose job is it to buy agent force?
Nobody's at this point. It's operations. It's business ops is there to make things more efficient. So maybe that's linked to finance as well. But finance is there to make sure the money's there. But ops is there to make sure it happens. So I take some sympathy with Kerry's point that maybe TA, or what the next iteration of TA should be, maybe fits into the ops side of it. We're there to deliver the business objective. I wouldn't even say it's task level, Adam. I think the task level is downstream of the objective, isn't it? It's like business wants this objective, right? Everyone's got to help deliver that, irrespective of whether it's a human being, a robot, irrespective of the contract that you have with it. Just how are you going to get to that outcome?
You know who we should get on here?
Go on.
Is Steve Lewis, who I'm sure you know.
He was at
LinkedIn for years, and he was at Robo Recruit. Not Robo.
That's
Robo
it. That is the Steve Lewis I was thinking about.
Right. Well, you know where he is now. He leads Agent Force in the UK. At Salesforce.
No way.
His job is selling digital workers, digital labor forces into major UK companies.
Mate, Steve, I know Steve's an avid watcher of Brainfood Live as well. Steve, come on down, mate. We'll get you in. I saw him last year. I didn't realize he'd moved on to a new business. But yeah, I can see his LinkedIn now. So yeah, it'd be brilliant. Get him in.
Who makes the decision? He'll be able to tell us that. Who makes the decision on whether this is, we're going to hire 50 people to go after this new territory, or we're going to use Agent Force to go after that territory?
That's happening. That's happening next week.
Next
All right. I'll let you go, Adam. I've got to go, mate.
All the best.
See you later.